News Radio 600, Kogo.
You know, when you think of heart attacks, you probably think the things that put you most at risk are smoking, high cholesterol, being fat, right? Mental health issues probably don't spring top of mind.
Dr. John Duncan, CEO of ViaScan, that's a company that specializes in the early detection of heart problems, and the doctor is joining us on the Kogo News Live line. And doctor, what does depression do to your heart?
Well, Ted, it can do the same thing as these other things that you mentioned, because when you're depressed, you tend to isolate yourself, you eat comfort foods, you overeat, and that causes obesity. That raises your blood pressure. All these unhealthy habits collectively can have an impact on heart disease.
So one of the things that you do when you're depressed is make unhealthy decisions, or does the depression itself also put a strain on your heart?
Well, Don, that's a great question. Some of the research coming out now suggests that there may be some direct linkages too, because when you're depressed, it changes your hormone profile. If you can think of it as happy hormones and depressed hormones, then that's kind of the concept that we have in these depressed hormones. They can have a direct impact on your heart, just like your thyroid, which is a gland that secretes hormones, can have a direct and important impact on your heart as well.
All right, so what can people who suffer from depression do to lessen their risk of heart problems?
Ted, I think the most practical thing they can do is that they might not think of is to start an exercise program. The data is so consistent and clear. When you're exercising, the heart's pumping, the problems that you thought you had melt away. And so it might take a little bit longer to change this happy hormone profile in your brain that chases the depression away. But after about 8 weeks of regular exercise, the studies show it's just as effective as the antidepressant medications. That's number one. Number two is the worst thing a depressed person can do is to isolate themselves, and that's what they normally end up doing, and that's a self-perpetuating negative cycle. They go home, they're not out in the public, they have all these negative thoughts of helplessness and hopelessness, and it all feeds into this negative cycle. So what you do to break that cycle, go out to Starbucks or Buffalo Hot Wings, some social gathering, take your laptop, surf the net, listen to people's conversations and chatter. Being out in the sun can change your happy hormones. So don't isolate yourself. Be out and about.
Now, is there a way to test to see if you have too many of the bad hormones in your system?
LaDonna, right now, there are some tests that you can take to look at hormones. One of them, serotonin. Many of the antidepressant medications, they work directly on serotonin in the brain. So those hormones can be evaluated to evaluate whether that might be a linkage to your depression. But the listeners need to understand there's a difference between depression and feeling blue. When you have a negative life event, you get fired or you get in an auto accident or something, you might feel down for a day or two or three. But depression is when that day or two or three links into 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months. Now it becomes a chronic way of thinking. That's diagnosed as depression.
All right, Dr. John Duncan, thank you so much. You know, it's hard to put together that mental link to your heart, but it certainly makes sense.